Yo,
Big Mike.
what's
God, dog. You know what?
what's up, man?
I was on a good streak.
Hey,
And the streak has ended. I was
I'ma
on a
let
good
you-
home win streak, and it is ended. And you already chop it up, but it's all
Hey.
good. Nick Jack, man, give me a sound check because I don't know what's going on. Big Mike, what's good?
hey, I just hope this chop up don't happen throughout the episode. I don't need cheap counsel coming here and talk about Walmart Wi-Fi and all that other stuff, man. I'm good, man. I'm good. I was on a mission today, but I'm good. I'm in full effect right now. What's up, man?
I appreciate Nick Jack, man. What's up, man? Oh man, I can't believe I was on a good streak, man. All right, hopefully our internet stays up. You chopping up a little bit, but we'll get through it. Yeah, we'll get through it. Angela, what's up, man? Hey, glad to have you back in the building. Hey, if you ain't seen her episode, go ahead and look at it. I'm gonna get it together. We have a very special guest here. I'm not gonna waste a whole lot of time at all because we have.
We already done wasted enough.
Did I need that?
Hey, I said we. Hey, I spoke French.
I didn't hear that. Okay,
I spoke French and gave you a little bit of assistance.
Yeah, I appreciate that. All right, let's go ahead. I gotta do two things real quick.
Just
boom.
two. Don't do no more than that.
Let's go ahead and put out the disclaimer. Anything that comes
Yeah.
from Unpopular Celebrities is all unofficial. It's done in the capacity of Pete and Mike, not as military members. None of the views of us or any of our guests are in the views of the Department of Defense or the military. Man, I'm gonna get it right. We are live on Facebook and YouTube. I'm excited. I'm very, very excited. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to bring in our very special guest, Chief Master Sergeant Hope Skibitsky. Ma'am, how are you doing,
ma'am?
I am wonderful. How are you?
Finally, we're doing all right, hopefully.
It seems like you guys are having a little bit of a struggle.
Oh, man. This is a daily occurrence. A daily occurrence with us. If I
Well,
could
we
find the
appreciate you
wrong
jumping in
door,
with us.
yeah,
Go ahead.
definitely.
My pleasure.
Well,
Man,
we
this
finally, go ahead,
go
man.
ahead,
What you
Mike.
doing?
No. Go ahead. I'm doing 3 things at once. Go ahead. I'm flustered.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
you must have drunk some coffee, a Red Bull, and a 5-hour shot before you went live.
See,
What's
this is
in
my
that?
energy right here.
Yeah,
This is my
I know you
energy.
don't. I know you don't drink, so I don't know what's
Right.
in that. But whatever it is,
That's
well,
my
you in the
energy.
desert. You in the desert, so it must be one of them rippets. It must be a rippet.
Nah, it ain't. It ain't. All right,
Anyway,
enough about us.
yeah, ma'am, I'm not going to steal any of your thunder. I need you, and I would like for you to please introduce yourself to the people, to the 1 or 2 people that might not know who you are.
Yeah, sure. I'm Hope Skibitsky. I am the command chief of the Air Force Installation Mission Support Center here at JBSA San Antonio, Lackland, Kelly. I'm a medic by training, and I have been in the Air Force for just shy of 28 years. And I don't know, I've had the privilege to do a whole lot of different things. And so I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in education and training, I've worked in airman development, so kind of a broad spectrum of experiences, but they've both been challenging and a ton of fun.
Okay, all right, go ahead, Pete.
Yeah.
I ran them off a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, our internet is acting up a little bit, but we're gonna get through it one way or another. So I'm not sure if y'all can hear me. If y'all can't, please give me a thumbs down or something,
good.
or keep
good.
it going. So man, Chief, I gotta ask you. I mean, you're a medic by trade. What exactly do you do for medical? Because a lot of people think just medical are doctors, and that might not be the case.
Oh my goodness. So as 4Ns, when I very first came in, we were like, there's tons of different shred outs of medics, but we're kind of the plug and play medic. If they need us anywhere in the building, they can kind of put us there. We draw blood, we do EKGs, we work in the ER. I spent the preponderance of my career in labor and delivery, but I've spent some time in, ER, pediatrics, family medicine, kind of everything and anything really. I've pulled teeth and done X-rays while deployed. So though those aren't my specialties, really they'll put a 4N like me anywhere we're needed.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Right off the bat, we have we can get to that. We have a lot of people in the building. If you guys have any questions, please write them in chat and we'll go ahead and put those out. But man, pulling teeth.
Yeah.
No, we talking about
that's the first time.
Yeah.
Literally. I was deployed to Al Udeid when we were very first building it, back when there was no hard structures and it was all tents. And we deployed with a dentist. And once the Army found out that we had a dentist, they started sending all their folks over to us. Because while we can't deploy unless we have a perfect dental rating, that isn't true with our sister services necessarily. And so some of them would come over with some pretty wicked teeth issues. And so to keep from getting sent home, their leadership would say, if you can clean it up and send them back. So I had a dentist that was like, look, I need help. And he didn't deploy with a dental tick. So that got to be me. I got to help him pull out some teeth.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I know.
I'll tell you, I'm in Al Udeid right now in a hardened facility. So we have done a couple upgrades since then, just a couple buildings here and there we put up. We have roads and buildings and traffic lights and everything now.
Really?
So we're pretty well built up.
Oh, man.
I remember when we were first there, we didn't have anything. And so now I hear people tell me there's like Baskin Robbins and all kinds of stuff there. I'm like, oh, see, I missed out.
See, you can't tell people because I tell people I'm deployed, and then I tell them like we got Baskin Robbins and Pizza Hut.
Bro, just say you TDY. Just use those 3 letters. Just there you go. You be all right if you use that. Just use TDY. You be all right.
Nah.
But pulling teeth.
Let's start from the
Don't
beginning.
steal my question. No, don't steal I'm not letting you steal my question right now. So I'm taking what you was about to say, and I'm going to say. So let's start from the beginning. What made you join the Air Force?
Oh gosh, so I was a teenage runaway, and so I couch surfed a bit, lived from place to place. I had a very genuine, incredible family take me in my senior year so that I would graduate high school. And the father of the family basically said, "Hey, we're moving when you graduate. So what are you going to do?" And I was like, I have no idea. I did not have the grades or the money for college. And so literally my small hometown didn't have a lot to offer, and I didn't have a place to go. And so he took me down to the local recruiter, signed some paperwork, got me signed into the delayed enlistment program. And as soon as I graduated high school, I kind of spent some time figuring out what I wanted to be and had nowhere to go. And so literally joined the Air Force because I was homeless with nothing to do and nowhere to go. And so the Air Force sort of, put me back on my feet. It was good.
Wow.
That's the first story I heard. Where are you from originally?
I call Ranger, Texas home. That's where I graduated high school, but I'm a nomad, a Texas everywhere. I'll claim any part of Texas.
Any part of Texas.
Any part of Texas. Not the world, Texas.
Yeah.
All right.
Isn't that the same thing?
Yeah.
See, I hear that too often. But it's too many people within our circle that's from Texas, so I ain't going to say nothing bad about it. I don't know if I catch a punch to the back of my head or something. So I'm gonna let that one go. That's interesting though. So did you have any vision of the Air Force prior to him saying, "Hey, this is the deal," or was it like completely like I just need to do this?
Well, we started talking about it. My biological dad was in the Air Force, but he retired. I was like 4, so I don't have much of a recollection of it. So I just sort of mentioned, like, I could join the military because, I at least had an understanding that the military existed, though there was no sign of it near my tiny, tiny little Texas hometown. So we had to drive like an hour away to find the nearest recruiter. And so it was only because I had the working knowledge of my biological dad having served.
Okay. And did you want to come in medical?
I did not know we had jobs. I mean, I hate to sound like an idiot. I thought we wore uniforms, carried guns, marched around, fought wars. Like, I had no idea. When I got to basic training and they had us sitting in that tiny little finance room, which has not changed, by the way. And the girl next to me leans over and she's like, "What's your job?" And I was like, "Air Force. What's your job?" She was like, "Ooh." She said, "You're open general."
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So they got you with that one, huh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the recruiter was doing me a solid, giving me a place to go. So I guess he didn't have to figure out what I could do because doing anything was better than the nothing I had on deck. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. 100%.
Hey, yeah. So what was your first duty location?
Oh, so I went to Shepherd for tech training, and I stayed there for phase 2, and I stayed there for my first assignment. I don't know if that was the original plan, but I was that guy that got pregnant in tech school. So lots of things had to change early on.
Yeah. Wow. So Shepherd Air Force Base is where you call home for a while.
That's right. 5 years.
So you stayed in Texas for a long time. Texas is truly home. Not leaving
Dude, it
Texas
wasn't hurting my feelings.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's good. I'm not sure how far Shepherd was from where family was, but that's always good to have family close by when you start out.
So I didn't have a relationship with my family really at that time. So most of my relationships were friends that I had left from high school. So they were about a 2-hour drive away. Wasn't terrible. They were within an arm's reach, probably too close for a young me. I probably needed to get a little further away.
Yeah, I think all of us understood that as a little bit, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Needing to get away. I need to separate from everything, start over completely in a way. Yeah. So right. you mentioned being a young mom early. Like, how was that? What was that like?
Oh my gosh. So I guess technically if you're not trying to not have kids, you're trying to have kids. And so I didn't have a clear understanding of how that worked. I quickly found out. And so it was a struggle. I mean, I didn't have a stripe to my name and I had a small human on the way. So I had to figure it out quickly. I was that young airman that luckily had a lieutenant that understood the ways of the world. And she was married to she joined the Air Force after her husband. She was married to a master sergeant. And so they worked to get me on food stamps and WIC and a couple of other things. And so it was hard and it sucked. And because I worked in labor and delivery, I was a 12-hour shift worker, which made it even harder because how do you find childcare when you don't really know anybody? So yeah, I definitely didn't make my early years in the Air Force easier on myself. That was sure.
Yeah. But
Wow.
yet you decided to stay. Go ahead, Pete.
Right. No. You're about to go where I was going, I think. Go ahead.
No, I
Oh
just
yeah,
said, but
well,
yet you go ahead, Chief.
I decided to stay because I knew I couldn't do it on the outside. What was I going to do? Make things as hard on my little human as it had been on me? So at least the Air Force was keeping the lights on. So
Yeah.
I won't tell you I was bought into my patriotic self back then, but I was certainly bought into a steady paycheck.
No, I completely understand it, and with the circumstances as
100%.
well. So did you have a supervisor, anybody? I know you talked about the lieutenant. Did you have anybody else in your stead that kind of helped you out through those struggling times?
So I will tell you, I did not have the world's best first sergeant. I also didn't incredibly love my chief. That individual was quite different. And then my supervisor, he had a lot on his shoulders. He was also the NCOIC of our duty section. So that dude ran the place. And so I didn't see him or have much interaction or mentorship with him, but there were three people really that I didn't even realize were pouring into me, but they did. There was a civilian named Shelly. I don't know if she's still alive. She was diagnosed with cancer about the time that I was PCSing. But she was amazing. She would bring extra food in for herself when she was on shift with me and make sure that I got to eat. So she was fantastic, but she made sure I understood my job inside and out, which the better I was at my job, you know this, the more your leadership actually will put you in front of opportunity because you did really good at the thing they asked you to do to start with. Well, I didn't know that until she taught me that. So I had her on my side. I also had that lieutenant who was amazing. She was a Lieutenant Sylvia Pena, but she retired as a lieutenant colonel. And then I also had, his name was Master Sergeant Maxwell. I can't tell you his first name. I was a grumpy, mad at the world, pregnant, then not pregnant, then messy airman, but man, he was wonderful. He was high energy. He was sharp. He was outstanding. He would always tell me, get that ugly look off your face and get to work. And, he tough loved me, but he then would sit me down and walk me through how and why and that kind of thing. But I will tell you, if he wasn't like cracking a whip, I probably would have sat down and got comfortable with myself.
Yeah.
Wow. So how important was that for you during that time to have that? And probably didn't know then, but now, how important was that having that person right there next to you? And then it also transitioned to your first PCS. How was that?
Well, I mean, it was vastly important to me because a lot of people, I was mad. I was mad. I got pregnant. I got into a marriage I knew I shouldn't have. I was $70,000 in debt before I was a senior airman. I was a hot mess, and I was a 2-pack-a-day smoker. So doing PT was hard. I couldn't lose weight, which came with the pregnancy. I was that person that I kept my first sergeant busy. And so having somebody that was riding my tail like a government mule and telling me to kind of get over feeling sorry for myself, because it would have been really easy to just feel sorry for myself, right? And that was vital to me. But getting out of Texas, away from all those people, starting anew, it was also hard because I PCS to RAF Lakenheath. And back then, when you got to your first base, you had to go to your CSS, then the orderly room, and you had to weigh in. And I weighed in over my max, so I got put on the weight and body fat management program. And I'll tell you, that was a wake-up call because somebody was telling me I wasn't as good as the people that were telling me I was really good at my job, but being really good at your job is only one part of the equation. So it was good. It was bad. It was messy,
Yeah. So I know a lot of us, we talked, I think a show or two ago, we talked about finding your why, right? And finding your why is what made you think, okay, yeah, I want to click this button again. I want to keep going. At what point did you find your why, and what was that why for you?
So when I joined the Air Force, like I told you, I didn't know we had jobs. And in basic training, I loved it. I loved the drill. I loved the structure. I loved the schedules. I loved knowing exactly what you were going to be asked to do every day. It was very good for me. But then when I got to tech training, and it was kind of like Club Med, everybody was like running amok, acting a fool. Everybody was doing their own thing. I was like, ew, I don't want this. This Air Force thing is messy. I want out. And then I got pregnant. And so getting out wasn't the time, but I still was sure I was going to do my 4 and get out. But then I had to re-enlist in order to, I had applied to be a military training instructor as a senior airman because I thought, I want to go back to BMT. And so they told me, you have to have retainability. I re-enlisted, and then they didn't let me go be a TI because it was the one and only time in my Air Force career that my career field offered a re-enlistment bonus. So I ended up, go figure, right? I ended up with an overseas assignment. And when I got overseas, I was like, okay, what do I do with my hands, right? Like, I have no idea what to do with this. And so I had re-enlisted so I could go be a TI, and now I couldn't be a TI. And now I was overseas. I wasn't sure if I liked it. But while I was overseas, man, I made closer friends than I had ever made in labor and delivery. Some of them still today, I'm just like, I mean, close knit with. They were my original reason why I was going to stay, because I had never known friends like that, right? Like, and they all seemed to love it. So I thought, well, what's wrong with me if I don't love it when these amazing people love it?
Right.
And so why I ended up like falling in love with it was, I told you, I weighed in over my max. Within 2 weeks of being assigned at Lake and Heath, I found out I made staff. And I had had a really tumultuous first time testing experience. So my second time went much better. But that first time testing made me, oh, I didn't even know we tested for rank. Like, think about it. I came in as an airman basic.
Right.
6 months later, they gave me a stripe.
Wow.
1 year later, they gave me another stripe. 18 months later, they gave me a third stripe. I thought they just kind of kept coming. And I was on bed rest when everybody else was going through FTAC. So I didn't know how that worked. And so I was salty because when I went to work one day, and this was before you had electronic schedules, you had to go in on your days off to make sure nobody had changed the schedule. And I found out that they had taken me off shift that night and that I was testing the next day. And I said, testing for what? And they said, you're testing for staff. And I said, staff of what? And they said, staff sergeant. And I was like, there's a test for that? And so I went in the next day to take the test, and the guy, being jovial, was like, oh, I hope everybody studied. And I was like, there was a study for this? And he kind of looked at me with like, and I'm one of the reasons why you now have to get your study materials at least 120 days out. I'm that guy.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I literally had the worst experience. I had no idea what any of it was. I sat out in my car in one of those snot, bubbly, breathless crying sessions. And I came back in for the second part of the test and just flummoxed my way through. It was awful. And so on my way out, the guy gave me an old PFE, and he's like, hey, better luck next year. And I was like, what the heck is this? Because that was back in the day when you had to go to the library to study or to get AFIs and stuff. Right. And so I was flipping through this book, and I was like, what is this? And on the back, there were all these reference materials. And I got so mad at the world. And I said, I can't believe nobody told me. Like, what did I do wrong? Why didn't anybody share this? Oh, I was mad. I was taking it out on my steering wheel. And yeah. And so when I found out I made staff, I had a little thing in my head that said, I can do better by somebody else than was done by me. And so that's when I think I first bought in. That was a long way around my back, touch my elbow. But that's where I first bought in and thought, you know what, I could make a thing of this because I could make this better for somebody else. And so I think that's where I finally decided I wasn't just in it. I was in it.
Right. Right.
Yeah, wow. So that's crazy. So you put on staff, right? You made staff, and then where'd your journey take you from there? I want to go through the whole thing because I'll be honest with you. A lot of people try to connect with me and say, "Oh my goodness, you got Chief Skibitsky. You got to ask her about this," and I'm just like, "No, I just want to find out everything for myself, and y'all can tune in and find out too." So that's why I'm trying to go through the whole thing, trying to find these stories. They did tell me some things, but I just want to find out where it takes place at instead of trying to jump straight there.
Yeah, sure. So I had the privilege while I was at Lake and Heath to become a part of the Honor Guard, which I loved. And it let me get a little bit of that drill thing that I was hoping to have gotten out of BMT. Right. And I had won Honor Guard Member of the Year, so I got to go up in an F-15, which only further excited me for being a part of the Air Force because I'm like, wow, like if you do really good, they take you up in airplanes. And so and so I then had the opportunity, the MTI recruiting team came back. And so I applied to be an MTI one more time. And so they accepted me. So I left there and I went to Lackland to be a military training instructor. And I got duped because it was supposed to be a 3-year tour. Air Force was experimenting with 3 years so that they could draw more folks in. And then 3 years became a 4, 4 years became a 5. I PCS'd to Travis and they sent me back on a 9-month manning assist. So after that, I couldn't get out of BMT. Excuse me. So yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot in between there, but I went from Lake and Heath to Lackland, and I had the most awesome, awful, incredible, miserable time as a military training instructor.
So what, I mean, if you had to sum it up, what did at that point in time of your career, what did it teach you? Like, what was the biggest lesson out of that?
So it taught me not to be selfish. So I had married my son's dad. We should not have gotten married. We both knew it. We tried it. It was awful for both of us. We got a divorce, and when I went down to be a TI, I was a single parent. And I tried hard, but we were working 18-hour days, and we were, on the street all the time. And so selfishly, I tried to keep my son with me, and I would, take him to somebody at 2:30 in the morning. They would take him to before care would take him to school, aftercare would pick him up, another friend would pick him up from aftercare. I would go get him at 10 o'clock at night. I didn't see him with his eyes open for 2 months. And I thought, you know what, I'm being selfish. I never get to see my kid. His dad never gets to see him. So I ended up sending my son to live with his biological dad for the first 2 years of being an MTI, because I just couldn't do it. I could have done it, but it would have been selfish against my ex as well as my son. And so it taught me how to ask for help. It taught me how to rely on people. It taught me how to be a good mom by caring more about my son than my own selfish ways. So yeah, it taught me a lot, especially about people, because I mean, if you're seeing 52 to 60 people every 6.5 weeks, I mean, you have to learn a lot about people.
Right.
Yeah. So real quick, take care of some business. Mike, thanks for the donation to the show. Anybody else that wants to donate, you can see the website on the bottom. Go and donate. Said this is the best PME that he gets. So really appreciate that. It's the best PME that I get as well. So I want to dive into the TI thing. So what was one of the probably worst and best experiences that you remember about being a TI that early on? Especially I want to type in the coming from the medical career field and maybe being around a bunch of TIs, maybe a different type of personality and structure.
Yeah, different personalities for sure.
So I'll tell you, the worst was probably also the best. Early on, you make a lot of mistakes. You can't help it, right? But you hope that you glean something from those mistakes and you don't do that thing again. And BMT was really good for making you remember your mistakes so as not to repeat them. Yeah. And so I remember the first time I accidentally marched a flight out into the street without road guards. I got to be a road guard for the rest of that time. My trainer took over my flight and made me a road guard. And I will tell you, I never again forgot to put road guards out. I remember the first time I sent in my chow runner without making sure that it was my chow time. And so I got to be a chow runner. So I also remember the time I forgot to check shoelacing before I sent my flight out of the dormitory. And when my supervisor came up and found an improperly laced pair of shoes, I got to relace every pair of running shoes in the dormitory.
Goodness. Wow.
I mean, it was exhausting.
Yeah.
And
sounds like it.
It was a little bit humiliating because you're like, man, I am having my lunch eaten in front of a handful of recruits, right? And so I'd be marching down the street and you're supposed to maintain near the rear end of the flight so that you can see the whole flight and you're watching them. You tend to creep up, and next thing you know, you're 3 ranks in and the other 9 ranks of your flight are behind you, and somebody's going to get hit by a car, or a recruit's going to run off, or who knows, whatever. And you'd have a TI from across the way yelling at you like, hey, hold back in, your damn flight looks like shit. And you're just so humiliated because you're like, oh my gosh. So you're like backing up and all your recruits are looking at you like, ooh, you done messed up now, right? So, and I hated it. But then I loved it because you knew people were going to hold you accountable. You knew others were watching. It takes a village to raise a child. You could never mess it up because somebody else was going to call you on the carpet for it, if for nothing else but to humiliate you. And so you were going to work really hard to, know your blind spots, catch your blind spots, fix the problems. you'd tell your dorm chief, if I'm getting too far away, you better holler at me, because if we stop, I'm going to eat your lunch, right? So your dorm chief's like, man, back up, back up, back up, back up, right? So
you done terrorized the kid.
Yeah, I know, right?
You're telling somebody that story right now.
Yeah.
Afraid. That's cool. I never knew half of that. I never knew that, you know, if you were in a TI and training, if that's what happened on the flip side, you had to end up doing the job. I never knew any of that.
They don't do that anymore. That was one of the things that changed. Good, bad, or indifferent. Everybody has their own opinion, but it was definitely a good experience for me, because I'll tell you, it ingrained an impression that I was not going to forget.
So what did you? So you was so at that point in time, staff starting the course, right? So when you talking about transforming from all of that, from being held accountable, from learning those lessons, what did that do for you as a supervisor?
So, one, it taught me that if you love somebody, you will tell them where they're messing up. People often believe that if you really love somebody, that you only tell them the good stuff, or if you want people to like you as a supervisor, you got to handle them with kid gloves. In reality, people will start off mad at you if you tell them the hard truth, because nobody likes to hear that. Everybody that says, oh, I want the real feedback, they get their feelings hurt. And if you give them the real feedback, they hate you for a minute. They go eat on it a little bit, and then they come back and they actually get it. But nobody likes being told you suck. Nobody likes being told you screwed it up. But they realize after a while that if you get that feedback all the time, it's not harsh, it's not ugly, it's making you better, and that somebody's actually looking out for you. I would rather you tell me I got crap in my teeth than have me walk around with crap in my teeth, like,
right.
And so the subordinate supervisor relationship is the exact same way. You have to love somebody enough to hold them to account rather than let them fall on their face.
Right.
How difficult is it to transition from, and we all have our stereotype. Well, I shouldn't say we all. Some people have stereotypes about the medical world. So how difficult was it to transition from the TI world to the medical world, or back to the medical world?
So I've heard all the exact same things, and everybody has their own anecdote. And if you could insert any AFS, and it would probably read the same, right? Like insert flyer. Flyers do whatever they want. They behave however they want. They're insert maintainer. They only ever wear trousers. They're dirty as hell. They don't know what a belt is. Like, you could insert any AFS and find all the same kind of flaws, just from a different perspective, right? On the medical side, one of the things that is true is that we work with people who walk in the doors of the Air Force as a lieutenant colonel or as a full bird colonel, which is not true everywhere. I mean, it's true in some places, but so now you have people that are, no kidding, potentially in charge, that are still learning their way through the Air Force. But people look at the rank and automatically assume they've been in for 15, 18, 25 years. And so as young enlisted medics, like, up just like everybody else, and you went through all the same training and all that. And so here you are having to do a lot of upward training and development. Some love it and they're grateful that you're doing it, and some hate it. How dare you treat me like I don't know? Do you even know I'm a doctor, or I'm a nurse, or and you're like, yep, I know, but I still also know you're not Air Forcing very well, right? And so when you're in it to begin with, you recognize it. But when you go be an MTI and you come back, it's almost like a heightened awareness when somebody isn't towing the line. And it becomes really difficult, because in the MTI world, it got really easy to tell a recruit, fix it, or tell another MTI, you're messing up. Both scenarios, they'd correct it because they want to be better, or they don't want to get yelled at anymore. You go back to the medical group and you tell somebody, hey, X, Y, and Z. It is polar opposites. You either get the one that's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for telling me, or the one that's like, I'm going to save a patient's life first, and then I'm going to care about that. So,
I mean, I guess I understand the importance of that one. But I guess, like, we have, and Mike knows who I'm talking about, but we had some TIs come in, and I think they had a very hard time transitioning from the MTI Air Force, if you say, to the security forces, and how to talk to troops. Because I think as an MTI, I've never been one, but as an MTI, I think it's when you talk to airmen, they're going to listen. And I remember when I was, you could, as my MTI would tell me anything, I'm just going to do it. Because one, I don't want to get yelled at. I don't want to do no push-ups, and I don't want to be embarrassed. So I'm just going to do it. As we transition and go into the military, some people are at their second base, third base. Some people have been in, 10, 15 years. You tell them what to do, and they kind of look at you kind of sideways a little bit. But what kind of advice would you give for those people that are going back to the military to try to be patient? I'm not sure what advice you would give to them.
So I would say, one, delivery is everything. There's a reason why it's a very crisp, staunch, in and out, raised voice scenario in initial training. I raise my voice not just because I have a power trip and I'm trying to be the guy that can scream and yell, but because I don't want to have to repeat myself 80 times. If I say it to you, but I say it loudly, the other 59 will hear it, and hopefully somebody will fix them before they screw it up and I find it, right? But two, I got to get in, I got to get out. I don't have time to don my kid gloves and handle you gently and start with, I'm just going to mention it. I'm going to tell you to fix it and we're going to move on. No filed hurt feelings reports. We're just going, right? Mm-hmm. Delivery is different when you're back in the other side of things, because you have to realize everybody's in the middle of their knee-deep job. Mm-hmm. Back in basic training, their only job is make a bed, tie your shoes, hang your laundry. Like, you're learning attention to detail and jump through those small tasks. When you're out in the operational Air Force, people are in the middle of a thing. If I am in the middle of a surgery with a doc, that's not the time for me to be like, sir, you need to tie your shoe. Right? It doesn't make sense, right? But when we're all said and done, you can be like, hey, sir, you're not supposed to wear shoes with holes in them because that's an OSHA issue, and I don't want you to drop a scalpel and cut your toe off, right? And so I think that delivery matters. I think that remembering that being a military training instructor is a role. And so there's a certain way things happen. When you're back in your primary AFS, you're not in that role anymore. And so not that you should turn off the correction that has to be made. You just have to remember time and place. You also have to remember the delivery method, right? Like, you are not an MTI forever, but you are always the NCO behind the hat. And so you still have an obligation to do it. You just also have an obligation to do it differently because you're in a different environment.
Right. So with that being said, was it, do you feel like at any point in time it was hard for you to transition, or what did that transition look like for you?
I did. My husband and I were both military training instructors. I remarried while I was in BMT. And so we were both medics, but we were also both MTIs. So when we went back to the career field together, we had very different transition back experiences. I channeled all of that high energy, fast paced stuff into relearning our AFS. Everything had changed. So I channeled it that way. My husband channeled it with nothing but frustration. He'll tell you himself, he did not want to go back. And so going back into the career field, the only thing he did was try to figure out how he could get back out of it. And so, he struggled a little bit more than me, only because he never wanted to be a medic to start with. He wanted to be a defender. Air Force told him no. And so, yeah, right. And so
I'm sorry. I just had to throw that out there, but all
right. Yeah. So when we were back in the hospital, I found it a little easier to transition back, because I was like, look, I'm going to focus my energy on how do I get really good at helping these airmen understand how they could do better, and then I could help them if they did better. My husband, he had a tough time going back because all he did was recognize the flaws. Man, where the medics are going wrong. Man, where the medics can't get it right. Man. So where I was trying to say, okay, if 10 things are wrong and one thing is right, I'm going to focus on the right one and say, hey, good job and congratulations. And I think you did amazing. And now we're going to fix the other things, where he would walk in and say, that's screwed up and that's screwed up and that's screwed up and that's screwed up, and completely skip over the, hey, you did a good job thing. Where if I went in and recognized the good thing, the other 9 are looking at it going, oh, well, I want to be recognized for the good thing. And so then somebody else would do a little bit better, and then I would recognize 2 good things. I'm a believer that, you can work through things by recognizing positive stuff and correcting negative stuff, not necessarily going straight for the jugular,
Yeah.
Right.
Man, Mike, that kind of sound like people that I'm thinking about as she keeps talking. I keep reminiscing back, but we'll protect the name. We won't say any name, protect the innocent. But so I want to
don't
fast
involve
forward.
me. Don't involve me.
No, of course not. But so at the beginning, I'm learning a lot about you, which I love. At the beginning, it was a big struggle, and then it feels like you found your way with the MTI. When did we find out that it was a possibility that you could become a chief, first of all?
So this is going to sound ignorant, but I never really looked for the next thing. I never really looked for it. It just kind of happened. And I know that sounds like I didn't do anything for it. While I was it was like within the first few weeks of showing up at MTI training that I found out I made technical sergeant. And so within a few, probably I was in all others. At the end of things, I pinned on. And so I didn't have to worry about studying or any of that for my first few years as an MTI. But then I didn't do the thing I was supposed to do because I couldn't really take the time to study because I was exhausted, y'all. I had chair collapsy, couch collapsy. I would drive by Braille. Like I
was chair collapsy. I never heard of that one.
I'm telling you, I could not stay awake. I was literally working off of 3 hours of sleep a night. And then you're PTing with the recruits every day. Females were always on the second floor, and I pushed a lot of female flights. So I did thousands and thousands of stairs. You marched hundreds of miles. I was so exhausted. When it was time to actually study, I'd lie to somebody and say, oh, yeah, I'm studying. And I'm like the most insomnia-inducing thing ever was to close that book. You couldn't sleep. You open it up, and man, your face is in it. You're asleep in a minute. And so I did not do well to make rank as a master sergeant there. And so I just kind of got frustrated and thought, you know what? I can retire as a tech, whatever. I'm just going to be really good. I'm having a ton of fun. And so when I got back to my primary AFS, I had tested for master sergeant 4 times. No avail. It was the 4th time that I actually made it. I got back to my primary AFS and I thought, you know what? I got to do this. Nobody's going to do it for me. I studied and I made it. And I thought, whoa, because my husband and I had always said, once we make master sergeant, we can retire as a senior NCO, right? And so I kind of felt like not that I was done, but that I had achieved the thing I thought I was ever capable of. You guys remember, I joined the Air Force. I graduated 18 out of 36. I was the kid everybody said would never make anything of myself. My mother was illiterate. I have an illiterate sister. We were always told you were never going to be more than blah, 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 right? And so you tend to believe it. And so I'd always my whole life said, hey, I'm just not very smart. I'm not a very good learner, because you learned that enough that it then becomes your truth. And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because you say it often enough, you start to believe it. Right. And so it wasn't until I said, you know what, no one's going to do this for me. I have to do it for myself, that I actually studied my way through. I finally found out I made master sergeant. And then I was just having a ton of fun. I was working in the emergency department. I deployed to Afghanistan. And as a medic, I will tell you, there is no better way to fill your medic high than go do the things we did in Afghanistan. And so I was just having so much fun doing the thing I was doing. I didn't even recognize it. That I had the opportunity to go be a career assistance advisor. I took that opportunity, and it was almost as though once I landed in the door, I found out I made senior master sergeant on my first try. And so I at that point was just like beyond myself. Like, I can't even believe it happened, because it felt like it happened to me, almost like I didn't do anything for it.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I was in a DSD when I tested for chief the first time. So I kind of thought, people always say in DSDs, you just don't promote very well. And so I honestly found out I had missed the promotion. I had the #1 board score in my career field. Wow. I screwed it up. I didn't study because everybody had always told me, you're not going to promote in the DSD. So I didn't put any effort into it.
Believed it.
And then that's right. And then when I found out that I had the highest board score, I thought, you know what, I did this. I screwed this up. It could have been me, and I have nobody to blame but myself.
Wow.
But everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason.
That's
right. I really appreciate the fact that you said you just focused on where you was at, and you didn't have your sights set on that promotion, is you were worried about where you were. And I had me and actually this mentor that, that I'm mentioning, that I'm talking about, we just had him on the show recently. And that was one of the things he told us, like, be the best that you are where you are. Because if you're doing that, you're doing what you need to do without even focusing on it, right? Because me and Pete and a lot of the guests, we talk about people that has their sights so set on just promotion, but you don't know what you're missing in between that. If you're looking forward to that and that only, you kind of lost in what you should be doing in the moment. But I really appreciate you making that statement, because I think a lot of people needed to hear that.
I had a chief once tell me that they sat in a group of folks and they had a person who had just made master, like they hadn't even pinned the stripe on yet. And they're like, hey, what do I need to do to make chief? And they're like, make senior master sergeant. Like,
be a master. Be a master sergeant. Be that.
Yeah,
first.
That was kind of his point. Like, dude, live where you are. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's funny. We have that happen too. We have senior airmen that just pin on and they were like, I got to start studying for staff. And it's like, God bless, bro. Like, you ain't got the paycheck for senior airmen yet. And you already worry about staff sergeant. Like,
we're gonna have to replay that clip. That's gonna have to be a part of the clip that we play right there, because people need to hear that one.
And I get no pay for sponsorship, but I'll tell you, if you've never watched the TED Talk by Sean Aker called The Happiness Advantage, he talks about that all the time, how we consistently move the goalpost on happiness. We always say, like, if I get a good job, then I'll be happy. But then you get a good job and you tell yourself, I need to have a better job. You say, if I get a good car, then I'll be happy. You get a good car and you tell myself, I'll be happy when I get a better car. And so it's like we always move the goalpost on what success looks like. And so our brain never gets to revel in the success we've actually achieved. And so we have to get good at living in the moment. Like, YOLO, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Man, dropping these nuggets. I love it. So CA, you did the career assistance advisor, and man, I work for a really good career assistance advisor. It's like they only
shout
pick
out
the
to
good
Chief
ones.
Roman.
Yeah. So definitely. So what happened from there? A career assistant advisor, and then did we go straight to the command chief, or are we kind of on hold for that?
No. So I was the career assistance advisor. My time there was up. And so I had the privilege, I got hired to be the squadron superintendent at inpatient operations squadron there at Travis. So I had the most incredible boss. She was a hard nut to crack, but I'm telling you, she had just gone through a lot. Her 13-year-old daughter had died of pediatric cancer. And so she had spent the last year sort of out of commission. So when she got to me, her family was still on the East Coast because her son was a senior in high school and she wanted to give him a chance to graduate with his friends. So it was literally just me and her. My husband was in Korea. My son was graduated high school. No, he was in his senior year. So she and I were working in inpatient operations squadron. That's 24-hour ops. So man, did we pour into work. We were there 24/7. I remember my son was a senior. He'd call me at midnight. He's like, Mom, are you alive? I'm like, I'm fine. He's like, it's midnight. I'm like, oh crap, right? Like,
oh man, yeah.
So she and I, man, we ran long and hard. We worked well together. It was a great experience, but it was exhausting. But out of that, I got hired to go be the medical operations squadron superintendent out at RAF Lakenheath. And so I ran long and hard there, but I only got short 17 months because I had been hired to fleet up and become the group superintendent less than a year after I had put my chief stripe on. And but I got diverted and I got sent down to Lackland to be the chief of BMT.
Okay. Back to that world again, huh?
Back to BMT. I just couldn't get away. Yeah.
You know what? I'm glad we touched on that. I tried to set you up for that, but there's a very famous picture of you as a chief with your hat on, your MTI hat on, saluting. I think it was at the parade grounds or something. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that moment?
Every minute. I will tell you. So I had gotten back to be the chief of BMT, and they were so excited because I'm telling you, our MTIs, they were hungry for some love from somebody that understood the shoes they wore, right? And so I got down there and they put together an MTI mass. And so we went down the bomber and they asked me to lead it. And I did a miserable job. It had been years since I had marched anybody. And I called them forward march. They were on the correct step. I was on the off step. It was an awful experience. I dreaded it. They wouldn't even talk about it around me because they were like, oh, dude, chief screwed it up. And I was supposed to be so good. And so Women's History Month came around and they had decided to put together an all MTI female mass.
I saw
And
that.
so
It was nice.
yeah, and so I was so nervous because I'm like, dear God, I've already screwed this up once. That those females were amazing. They went out there with me time and time again to make sure I had my timing right, to make sure I was calling it right, to make sure I felt comfortable. I mean, those women poured into me and they made me feel so comfortable. I don't think I could have screwed it up if I wanted to. I don't know if you've ever read On Combat. It's a really great book, but it talks about do it until you can't get it wrong. And so we were out there every day doing it again and again and again, and the day of Women's History Month MTI Mass, it was perfect. I mean, you could have heard a pin drop aside from the taps on that bomb run. And somebody snapped a picture of our, halt and eyes right. And it was incredible. It was the most amazing thing. And I thought, you know what, this is my very last time to get to be in BMT and get to wear the campaign hat as a military training instructor. It was just such an incredible experience. And those ladies made sure that we went down the bomb run and did it in style. And so whoever captured that photo, man, they put a bow on the top of my career. It was just one of those things I will treasure forever.
Yeah, shout out to PA. We'll go ahead and give a shout out to PA.
Whoever you are.
Big shout out.
Whoever you are.
Quick, Mike, I hate to steal your thunder, but I'm gonna steal one more question if you don't mind.
Go
real quick.
Go ahead. We already know you're
Herchawi. Hey, Herchawi, great show today on L-Tag. If you guys want to check that out, L-Tag, they have Real Talk. I think it was part 3. It's a really good show. So good show on that. And we'll go straight to, I think you were familiar with Chief Dana Council. He tunes in here quite often. He's actually in the field right now in Langley. I don't know what kind of field he's in with his phone, but I sure appreciate him tuning in. But he said, what's one piece of advice you would give a brand new supervisor?
So I would say that okay, constant with both correction and compassion. I don't think it has to be one or the other. I know some people feel like you're either holding people to account or loving them to death. I think that it's okay to do both, but you absolutely have to do both. I feel like we do a lot of things that sound like, don't make me tell you again. My husband was the worst and my daughter was little. He'd say, Emily, if you do that again, one of these times I'm going to pull this car over and I might think about coming back there. And I'm like, dear God, would you stop? Like, she is not threatened by this, right? And so I feel like the same thing is true with our airmen. Like when I was a career assistance advisor, if somebody showed up to FTAC even 1 minute late, I'd write them a letter of counseling. I'd cancel their FTAC for the week and I'd send them home to their unit. And their unit was pissed. They're like, if they don't complete FTAC, I can't get them. I'm like, looks like you should have made them show up for FTAC on time. And then I would tell them to go to ADC with their letter of counseling. And I had the ADC would call me and they'd be like, really? They were 1 minute late. They were 3 minutes late. I'm like, great. So when's the acceptable? 5, 7, 11, 23, 4 hours? Like when is the actual line in the sand? Or was it that the standard had been established and they failed to meet the standard? And so the advice I would give is hold people to the standard. Don't be wishy-washy and change the standard every time it meets you, but hold people to the standard. They'll love you for it because then they don't have to wonder what the expectation is.
Wow.
Stop dropping all these nuggets. I don't know if everybody's ready to handle all these in one episode. You just dropping a lot of knowledge. I really appreciate it. It's like you're saying the things I want to say a lot better than I can say them. Big Mike, go ahead.
Well, now you know how to say them. All right.
That's right.
I think I stole this line from you probably about 19 times since I've seen you. And I believe you was on UMU. Again, shout out to UMU. And you made a comment to the fact of we are not going to like everybody we work with. So that is a false sense. You will not like everybody you work with. And I need to know where'd that come from. What made you feel that way? Where'd that come from? I like it, by the way, but where'd that come from?
No, so I mean, it's just the truth, right? I have had the privilege in both my young life of having, to things that maybe I wasn't proud of because you're surviving, right? all the way to my struggles through understanding the beginning part of the Air Force to growing up through the ranks. And you are going to have the chance to work with and for people that, man, you just do not respect. And that there's a lot of people that I will tell you, I love them as a human, but I just don't value them. Right. And so, it does not matter about my hurt feelings. It does not matter about my preferences. It does not matter if I want to go sit in a Walmart toy aisle somewhere and kick my feet. All that matters is we are professionals, and there is a professional work environment. And regardless of my own personal feelings about something, I have a job to do. And the Air Force isn't asking me to drag my personal feelings around with me. What they're asking me to do is go to work really hard at what I'm doing, and be a professional to get things done. And so you do not have to like everybody you work with, but you absolutely have to be a professional, and you've got to figure out how to get through it. Nobody's asking you to go break bread with them. Nobody's asking you to, invite them over to your house, meet your kids. Nobody's asking you any of those things, but you absolutely have to show yourself up at work and get the job done. And if you're not setting the example as an NCO, as a senior NCO, as an officer, then the airmen are going to pick up exactly what you're putting down, man. And so you've got to show the right thing. The optic matters.
I appreciate that. A lot of people, I think, need to hear that too.
Yeah, a lot of people need to hear a lot of stuff we're talking about. What do you like to do on your off time? I know we talked a lot about work. What do you do on your off time?
Okay, so first, I'm the biggest nerd. I love to read. I love actual books. I love audiobooks. I love great courses where you can like audit college courses and get all the knowledge. You don't get the degree, but I think I'm overcompensating, right? Like all the times when I was ever told I was dumb or I wasn't going to do good, or I told myself I was dumb or I wasn't going to do good. Now I realize I am like a lifelong learner. I love to read. I love to learn. I love all of that. So sometimes I mix that with the other things I love, which is everything outdoorsy. I like to hike. I like to bike. I like to kayak. I like to zip line. Now trust and believe I like the low zip lines because, I don't want to die of anything on a high risk activity form. No. Yeah. I have had 36 people, hey, Chief, you want to jump out of an airplane? I'm like, I will jump if my life depends on it. I'm not jumping even one time before then. Like, it's just not a thing that I feel compelled to do. But I love outdoorsy, get sweaty things. I love to do that stuff. And so sometimes I'll pop a good audiobook in and just go kayaking. Oftentimes this is why I only wear the right one. I wear this one earbud out is because I'll go hiking. I always leave the other one out. I know there's no bears in Texas, but they're big cats, right? So I have the one earbud in while I'm out doing my thing. But yeah, so I love outdoorsy stuff. I also like working in the yard. I have 2 big black thumbs. I'll kill anything green. I'm sorry. I'm looking at my tree out my window. And so, but I love to get out there and like dig holes so my husband can plant stuff and break rocks. Literally, we live in the hill country, so there are rocks everywhere. I just love physical activity. I love that stuff.
Yeah. So, and with that, we're talking about work and talking about, what you like how do you, we always talk about a work-life balance, right? I think it was Chief Master Sergeant retired Chris Rogers. She said she went away from saying to keep a work-life balance. It was more like she kept a harmony. I think that was the phrase she used. So how do you determine your work-life balance? How does that work? How does it work for you?
So I have never done a good job. And so I will not even tell you guys that I have advice for you because I screw it up. I have always swayed in the direction of work because the Air Force was me before I was a mom, and the Air Force was me before I was a wife, and the Air Force was me before I was in anything else. I always feel like without the Air Force, my kid wouldn't have had shoes on his feet or clothes on his back. I wouldn't have the education I have. So I've always felt like this dedication to give the Air Force. And now I realize that was probably a flawed thought because all of us have an Air Force expiration date. And mine is coming sooner than most. But I just feel like so many years I kept saying like, just one more email, just one more march the flight, just one more records check, just one more. And then the hours would be gone. And next thing you know, like you get home and the kid's asleep, or you get home and your spouse is frustrated with you because you didn't come home when you said you would. And I've given 12,000 apologies, and I'm not a good example, but I'm the example of why not to do it the way I did it. And I'll tell you, it wasn't me who taught me the biggest lesson in this. I had a chief that I worked with. He was an amazing chief. He put in the long hours, man. That guy, the only person whose vehicle was still in the lot when I left was him. And he would come by my office and tell me, get out of here. Don't be me. Don't be me. And he ended up succumbing to cancer. And his wife sent me a message the year of his anniversary of his death. And she said, he left me a note and told me to reach out to you and tell you to go home. Because he wished he had. And so I'll tell you, don't do what I did. Don't pour it all in. The Air Force, the day a rock falls on your head, the day you walk out the door, the machine keeps running without you. And so you've got to find a way to be really good at what you're doing, but to clock out and to go home, because you want those folks in the front row, you know?
Yeah. That
Mike,
front row.
Mike, say what you all. Yeah, Mike, say what you always say about trying your best or giving your all every day.
That you don't give your all. You give your best, but you don't give your all. Because if you give your all, you have nothing left at the end of the day. And I once I heard that, I strongly believe in it. Because like you said, being a parent myself it's extremely important. That time, once you lose it, you don't get it back. You don't get it back at all, right? So you're trying to make it up on the back end. And then I'm looking at myself 18 years down the line. My youngest is about to graduate high school and go to college, so you're trying to find those times in between you to spend that time, and it gets hard. So you got to understand, like you said, it's an expiration date for us all, be it 5, 10, 15, and 30. You got to realize what's important, but what's most important.
That's right. 100%. And I'm a firm believer that the Air Force is an amazing organization that does care a lot about us. I mean, there's very few organizations that cares what your family has going on or all that. I am bought in, right? I'm dedicated. But I feel like many of us feel like there's a dedication to this thing that outweighs our families. And there are going to be times when you've got to deploy. There's going to be times when you've got to exercise. There's going to be times. So on those times, those are the times you stay late, you are away from the family. On the other times, man, cut it off, go away. It's right. My husband used to say all the time, it's job security to leave something for tomorrow, right. Get out, go home.
100%.
I'll tell you, I have this full-bird colonel out here. His name's Colonel Brandon Secor, and he told me one of the dopest lines I heard. He had to go home. He had to fly home for something for a couple 2-day turnaround, and he's like, I have to go, even though we had something going on that's pretty important. And I said, how do you do that? How do you cage in and say, I have to go home, even though you know what's important? And he said, my family is my life. My family is my long-term plan. And when he said that, it dropped right to my heart. And I was like, first of all, I need to put that on a t-shirt. Second of all, it's just a great line to have. It's just a great line to have and to actually live by. And it kind of, when I heard it, it's like, what, am I putting my family as my long-term plan? And I need I need to step up and kind of do that a little bit more. But,
and if you're a leader,
take somebody that. Go ahead, ma'am.
No, you're fine. If you're a leader worth your weight in salt, then you've been training your replacement, which means it doesn't matter if I had a family emergency, if I cracked my ankle that morning, or if that's my kid's recital. If I haven't trained somebody to do the thing he's doing in my absence, I've done it wrong. I have done it wrong. People always believe that they got to hold their cards close to their chest and be irreplaceable. If you're irreplaceable, then you will not get replaced, which means you're going to be there doing the exact same thing while somebody else is moving on past you. So be replaceable. Yep. Start training your replacement the minute you know your job, man.
Yep, 100%. 100%. Man.
I don't even want to ask no more questions because it's so good. It is so good.
I got my question, and then you fire off, and then my question just get answered before I even ask it. Now I'm back to square one again. Thanks a lot, Chief.
Sorry.
Nah,
So-
I really appreciate you having us. But go ahead, Pete.
I guess I want to ask. I got two questions, and I got to give Chief his question because I need to, and before he calls me. So how do old supervisors? I'm gonna leave my name out and leave Big Mike name out, and says identify with new airmen today.
Old supervisor.
Oh my gosh. So this is so funny. It's an interesting debate, but you could probably look back as far as time and always find those older people that are saying these damn kids and their loud rock music, right? Like there's always the argument that these new generations are never going to be as good as us, and these and you know, in your own personal perspective that might be true, right? But it's only in your mind that that's true. The world is going to change. The only constant is change. And if things are changing and you are not willing to change with it, then you are stuck in the who moved my cheese mindset. And y'all, nobody moved your cheese. You ran out of cheese. You gotta move. You gotta be current, right? And so how do old supervisors do it? Well, the first thing they do is they sit down with their new persons and they say, hey, tell me what it is that interests you. Tell me what it is you're trying to accomplish. How can I align what I need us to do as an Air Force with what you want to do? And once I can put those two things together, then you now have a carrot to chase and I have a way for us to accomplish the thing that needs doing. If it's like a Chinese finger trap, man, the more you argue, the more you struggle, the harder it is, the more it hurts. You've got to relax and you can pull your finger out, right? So people need to realize, as these old supervisors, it's only true the way you know it, because that was the truth when you came in. If you came in today would be your new truth. We need to stop hanging on the past and be willing to change as things change. And the day we decide we cannot change as we need to is the day we need to sign off. Because somebody else is able to do it, and you've got to let them get the hell out.
Yeah, amen.
Gotta go.
This is getting so good. It's getting so good. I love it. I love it so much. Yeah. So about the changes that we talk about, and I won't keep you on too much longer, but it's so good. What do you feel about the changes? What's one of the maybe changes that you want to see? Something that you have in the back of your head that I want to see this change happen in the military, either before you get out or sometime soon.
So if I had a magic wand, and so it's a little unrealistic and far-fetched, but I'll tell it to you anyways. So my best friend, Wendy T, she's the SEL to SAF-MR. Amazing human, by the way, if you've not had the chance to meet her, but she was Navy when she first joined the Air Force, right? Before she joined the Air Force, she was Navy. And so on her ship, they have this thing called a Navy warfare pin, which any sailor can earn. And what that is she went in as an electrician. But while she was on the ship, she learned how to drop the anchor. She learned how to be a firefighter. She learned all the other tasks on the ship. Because if you fall off the ship, if you have a heart attack, if you catch on fire, whatever, somebody's going to have to take up the slack that you left the hole in. And so if you get trained on how to do all the other different jobs on the ship, and you're certified by the chief in that section, they actually award you a Navy warfare pin that you can wear in your uniform forever. She's an airman today. She's a chief, and she wears her Navy warfare pin that shows she was trained on all the other jobs on the ship. And so, and this is so far-fetched. I'm confident it's not possible, but it might be possible to an extent. When we talk multi-capable airmen, when we talk ACE, Agile Combat Employment, we think so small. Everybody thinks that multi-capable airman means I'm a 4N, I'm a plug-and-play medic. Let's teach me how to give shots and let me be an IBT. Let's teach me how to hand instruments and let me be a 4A, or a 4N1. Duh, that's a 797. That's not multi-capable airman, right?
Right.
In the Hope Skibitsky opinion, which doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Nobody's asking me. But what I think multi-capable airman looks like is if I am going to throw you on an aircraft because I need us to go somewhere, how about I teach you how to help somebody change a tire. I teach you how to fart an airplane. I teach you how to change out a fuse. I teach you how to walk the outside of the aircraft for safety. I teach you how to start an IV if we pick up a patient. Like, multi-capable airman means, in my mind's eye, if I only have a crew of 25 people, how do those 25 people make whatever's happening on this damn aircraft happen until it gets where it's going? And so if I could talk about a change I'd like to see in our Air Force, I would like to see our CFMs stop siloing us so heavily. And I get it, right? Like, everybody has their own little thing that's theirs and it's mine, and I want to take my ball and I want to go home. But what I think is important is when we are slimming down to the smallest we've ever been, but we have a big arena in which we work. Why are we not trying harder to make sure our airmen, and everybody's going to say, oh, they're so tired and we're going to work them so hard and they're really going to have a tough time with it. Stop putting words in their mouth. Every airman I've ever met that had the opportunity to go try something new was like, man, that was the coolest thing I've ever done. And you know what they let me do?
Yeah.
We like to speak on people's behalf all the time and say what they would absolutely hate. And the people that absolutely hate it because I'm just so tired, I can't take it. Get out, dude. Go do something else.
Yeah. Yo, this turned into a live TED talk right in front of our face. This definitely turned into a straight
but
TED
that's
talk.
what everything. That's what everything. We have a bad habit of trying to fix for the man below at the bottom from the top without ever asking him or her, you know, the man or the woman, what's wrong, right? We try to create that, oh, I got a great solution. How do you even know it's a problem? Right? Master Sergeant D, I don't see what's going on down there unless I go down there and figure it out, right? Who am I to make a decision to change with somebody I don't even know if they, you know, if that change works for them or if it works for that process? We have a bad habit of that. I agree with you 1,000%.
That's right. I mean, if I wanted to be a monotasker, I'd have stayed in my civilian pick-a-something sector where they're only going to ever let me do the one thing.
Right. right. 100%. Wow.
Wow, that's crazy. Mike, I'm losing words around here, man. This is
we're gonna get some hate mail on that .mil this week. I'm gonna tell him, hey, Chief Skibitsky said leave me alone. That's what I'm gonna say.
Oh God.
She said don't send me no emails.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, real talk is what it is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I realize that there's going to be a lot of people that are like, that's just not possible. And maybe it's not. But right. I will tell you, when I was in Ramstein, when Operation Allies Refuge kicked off, we had moms and dads and their kids. Mom had a kid strapped to her as they're building cots and building tents. And we had maintainers that were moving water and all kinds of crap in and out of the hush house. And we had flyers that were helping in-process patients. And we had, or not patients,
refugees,
right? Like, as we're moving these, I forget the term that we were using at the time because we were calling them something specific. My brain doesn't hold on to that. And so everybody was doing a thing that wasn't in their wheelhouse. Nobody was doing the thing that fell directly into their wheelhouse.
Right.
Because we had all hands on deck. We were having to do all the things that needed doing. And so multi-capable airmen showed itself that day. But multi-capable soldier, multi-capable, German airman, all of them, everybody was piling in and it was all hands on deck. And we had medics building fences and it was just incredible. And nobody was like, well, that's not in your AFECD. And I'm like, oh dear God. Right? Like,
right.
They just did it. They needed to get done.
That's right. And so ACE concept rolled out when the shit hits the fan because nobody's asking us when we want it to happen. It'll happen. And then when we say are you ready? Well, are you ready to do the one thing we ever let you do? I mean, yeah, good luck with that.
Right. I will say most airmen, and myself included, I hope to put myself in this, is will be willing and able when shit does hit the fan to just move and operate. And I think we want to do good. We just want to do a good job. And it don't matter if I ever seen a forklift in my life. I'm going to learn how to operate this thing without hopefully crashing into anything and try to get this mission accomplished. Now, if there's a forklift driver, do your thing, and I'll pick up security where I need to.
Yeah.
But if there's not, I'm gonna figure it out and do my best to get it done. And I think a lot of airmen will do exactly the same thing.
You're different. Hey, I'm doing security on the forklift. Put me in the forklift, and that's my vehicle.
No.
I'm be multi-capable. That's what I'm gonna move a barrier and fire my weapon at the same time.
Oh my God. But what I'm saying is what if as a young airman in the dorms, your person over here is a defender just like you, your person over here is a medic, your person over there is a logistician, your person over there is a comm, you all hang out together, you do whatever on the weekends. What if so-and-so's like, hey y'all, we're driving forklifts this weekend, you want to come do it? Like, what if the opportunity presented itself? Wouldn't you take it and go do it just because, hey, it's exposure and it's cool and it's neat and it's different? And then should the thing ever happen, man, you at least have a working knowledge of a time you tried it.
Right. Absolutely.
You know what's crazy, Mike? Mike, you might remember because Chief Counsel made me do this crap when I was an airman. We had to go forklift driving. We had to go build pallets. We had to go set up C-wire. Like, we were doing all kinds of stuff when I was an airman. And nobody called it agile or ACE concept or anything like that. We just, somebody was like, you're going here to learn how to build pallets.
I'm serious. I got forklift driver. I got forklift on my license. I'm dead serious. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Yeah. Like, to be honest with you, we had we had exercise this week. We had ammo troops come out. Ammo was doing shoot, move, communicate. They was doing down gunner. We had ammo troops come out and do that with us this weekend. They all had smiles on their faces. You know what I mean? They all had smiles on their faces. They always excited, taking pictures because they was learning something different. Chief, I agree 100%. We put our own ideas on other people and we assume that's what they want when we don't know. We don't know. And then just take a question. Everybody likes to do something new.
And when people say, oh, well, they're not trained. Well, how did I get trained? I didn't get trained because Dr. Pick-a-Person came in and trained me. I got trained because fellow MedTech Pick-a-Person handed me an IV and said, hey, walk through this and let's try it. Like, that's how we all got trained. We got trained by the person above us doing some semblance of OJT. Well, isn't that what you're doing?
You're doing.
Again, I know we can't teach everybody everything, but what I'm saying is if somebody has an opportunity, why not let them take it?
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I'm not sure if you want to touch on this, but we talked a little bit about AFSA beforehand, two kind of things. We talked about AFSA kind of before the show, and you dropped some real good nuggets on that. I was wondering if you would share those with us on AFSA. And then also, I know you were talking about your time is coming to an end on the military. I'm not sure if you want to touch on both of those.
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot of like private and professional organizations in the world, and I could probably name like 100 of them that are really good and they work really well for their individual purposes, right? But two that the Air Force dials in and endorses is Air Force Sergeants Association, as well as the Air Force, now Air and Space Force Association. And so AFSA is, everybody gets it confused because they hear Air Force Sergeants Association and they think, oh, it's only for NCOs or only enlisted. And it isn't true. Anybody over the age of 18 who cares about the quality of life of our military members can be an AFSA member. So your mother, your grandfather, your great uncle twice removed, any of those folks. And the reason why you have to pay to be a member of AFSA is because they go up to Capitol Hill and they speak on our behalf. And Capitol Hill's like, how do I know you're not just making up those numbers? Well, money talks. And so they have to be able to say the dollars affiliated with each of these members tell you that they're actually a member of this here council, right? And so AFSA fights for our quality of life. So if you go to your local AFSA chapter and say, here are some of the things that I'm interested in, they send those things up to the division. The division works with big AFSA and they come up with a slate of things that they're going to take to Capitol Hill and fight on our behalf for. And so the difference between AFSA, because AFSA does a lot of things with enlisted professional military education, but I highly encourage you to take a lieutenant, a colonel, take them with you. There were a few officers in the crowd this year and they came at me with like saucer-sized eyeballs and they were like, why did I never know this was a thing? And I'm like, shame on your NCOs for never telling you, right? And they not only do a great job of doing professional development for us, but they also fight for you to have the things you know to be true in the Air Force today. That quality of life that makes us different. That's because AFSA is fighting on our behalf. And if they lose their seat on Capitol Hill because their membership, all of the old members like me, we're getting old and we're dropping off. And if their numbers fall too low, they lose their seat. And then as soon as people lose the quality of life, they'd be like, oh, if I had only known, I would have been an AFSA member. Well, now you know, right? Like, become an AFSA member. And so anyways, they fight for a quality of life different than AFA. AFA is an amazing organization. And what they do is they fight for our mission systems, our weapons, all of those things so that we can continue to lean in toward the windmills, fight the big fight, grow our weapon systems, all of that kind of stuff. Both are equally important, working two totally different playing fields. So if you've not had the chance to look those up, look them up. If you've not had the chance to join, I'd encourage you to join. But both of those things are private organizations, that's right, but they support us specifically. So it's worth a look. As far as me tying a bow on this thing, so 27 and a half years, and I have decided with my family that this is our time to take the off ramp. And so December 8th here at Lackland, we'll be calling this thing a day. So it's come entirely too quick for me, but we just kind of felt that it was right. My family had their fair share of moves, and they decided that there wasn't even one more move in our future. So my husband actually agreed that we could retire here in San Antonio if we didn't have to move even one more time.
Okay.
Well, congratulations on that. I'm hoping, and it seems like that you happy with your decision. And I know we talked a lot about family in and out, and it's extremely important. Like, they have to have a say so. So I wish you the best of luck personally from me. I wish I could be there, but we'll definitely be rooting for you on the show. And yeah, congratulations to you and your family. But you got
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. I wish you could push it back a month because I'll be back in around January timeframe. But I totally understand. And like Big Mike said, wish we could be there. But definitely, sing praises for you all the time that we're on the show, because this was one of the best shows I think we've ever done. Definitely the best in the last couple of years. But I don't even know how to say thank you well enough to say what you've done for me today on this show. So I appreciate all the nuggets that you left for me. And selfishly, sometimes we do this show selfishly because I get a lot out of it. But I'm sure everybody else, and you can go back and read the comments. There was too many flying in for me to put them all up on the screen about everybody that you touched in your military career who appreciate you. And I definitely see why. It definitely makes a whole lot of sense.
100%. 100%.
I hate to see you go. But I understand, and I will always understand when it's time for people to go. And I'm glad you're going out on your terms, the way you want to go out. Definitely.
Yep.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
But this was entirely my privilege. I really appreciate you guys having me out. It was a ton of fun. I tell people all the time, I'm retiring from the Air Force. I'm not falling off the planet. So if ever there's something I can do for you, if there's something you need, let me know. I'm always glad to give anything I have until it's antiquated and doesn't mean anything anymore, and then I'll just give you my rotten old retiree perspective with my mesh cap. And so.
Well, we'll definitely keep that on the tab. So once you go ahead and hang it up, then we had to bring you back as a retiree, and we'll do it all over again. So we definitely keep that in the pocket. As long as you're willing to come back, we have you back.
Yeah. Colonel Obolowski couldn't come on, but she said hello. She made sure she said hello. So yeah, definitely one of the greats as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And if you need anything from us as well, we are always here from Big Mike and Korea, from me and IUD. And when we get back to where we're at, if you need anything from us, of course, it's easy to look us up and find us, and we do our best to get what you need. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I saw Dana ask if I was going to wear the retiree hat. Dude, I'm going to have to fashion that up a little bit. But yes,
indeed. Yeah, definitely.
That's your retiree gift, Chief. You just signed up for that one. That's what she was saying. She said you got to buy that. You got to buy the first hat and send it. Well, you're going to be down in Lackland, so you got to hand it to her.
Yeah.
We'll give you $2 from the Unpopular Celebrity donation box. Not really, but
Y'all, I got the most awesome gift the other day. I was presented with an OCP fanny pack, and it is probably the thing I wear more than anything else. It is amazing.
Fanny pack.
We call those tactical pouches. That's what we call them. Tactical pouches.
Fanny pack, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
No, that's awesome. That's going to be a 2903 next year.
Yeah. So before we close out, you definitely got to tell us, what is the first thing you're going to do as a retiree?
Oh, gosh, I'm going to get my nose pierced.
All right.
Really?
That was it.
I'm gonna walk right outside the gate. I'm gonna go get my nose pierced, and I'm gonna paint my fingernails.
I guarantee you, we could have polled everybody and said, "What is the first thing she's gonna do?" I don't think nose piercing would have been guessed, but
you got to think about it though. That's just like what's different from us in the beard. The first thing you ask the military do is, "I'm gonna grow my beard for the first year." So. I got it. I mean, it makes sense.
Grow your hair, grow your beard. That's always the first thing.
Well, I can't grow my I can't grow no hair. Yeah. My hair ain't growing, so I'm gonna stick to the beard part. That's it. But again,
I heard beards are coming.
Please don't get us excited like that. Ma'am, you cannot be at your level and say that.
No, but I watch Facebook to find out what's happening in the Air Force just like everybody else does.
You can't get us excited like that. People ready. They got picks and combs ready for this to drop. So,
but I'm just saying, like everybody gets our updates from social media, but I've been watching social media like everybody else, and it's been saying like beards are coming, and I was like, oh, is that coming? Because the last like 10 big releases on social media turned out to be true. So I mean, isn't that true? I don't know.
I just want to remind y'all of that disclaimer we put out at the beginning. None of these views have anything to do with the deal. We don't know anything about no beards. Don't call us about say unpopular celebrities. Told y'all about no beards. Right. None of that. I just want y'all to know. We had nothing to do with any of that.
Yeah. They gonna hitting us up on the website 2 weeks in advance. Like, where these beards at? I grew my beard out and got paperwork.
And Big Mike and Pete said it, and the chief signed off. I can see it already. That clip.
I can say anything I want on my way out the door, y'all. Watch.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
We still got a couple more years left. We can't. You try to get us in trouble.
Nah,
we still got a couple more years left.
Like, I had fun, man. Yeah, definitely, man. We'll go ahead and close this show off because we're gonna be on here all night. Man, I hope we can do this again. I really do. I know you're gonna be busy getting your nose pierced and everything when you get done. So we'll wait a little bit, but definitely try to get you back on again. Really, really appreciate it. Big Mike, Big Mike, what you got? This was a ton of fun.
Nah, I said I really appreciate you giving us your time, coordinating with us to get you on. We know the crazy time difference on our end right now. It's 3:30 a.m. for me, but I wouldn't have missed this. I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad you made it to where you are. I mean, hearing your story, I know it's a bunch of people that heard that story and at least got some kind of motivation to know that they can keep pushing. Don't let anybody else decide their fate. And just be who they are and use that to get to where they need to get to. So I really appreciate you sharing your story. I know it's people that probably didn't know that, and that just made them respect you even more. So I wish you the best of luck again. We got you on the tab for when that retiree pin hits on, and I will send you another message and say, hey, ma'am, you need to come back. And hopefully you accept our invite. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. This was such a privilege. Thanks, y'all. And thanks for staying up late to spend some time with me. I appreciate you.
Andy,
what?
You reach all the broadband that we could pull off of this thing. So I really appreciate y'all. We out here. We'll talk to y'all next time.